So here we are, the first weekend of the Autumn Nation Series 2022. And my word, just look at the fixtures. This is going to be a big one. If you are new around here, then please subscribe. I know a lot of you existing subscribers have been asking for this video, and to be honest, I'm the same. I cannot wait. So let's just get straight into it. I know in my previous video I looked at the week 1 fixtures, but obviously all the teams are now named. So first up is Scotland and Fiji. Now, as I said previously, I can't see past a Scotland win here. They were actually unlucky against Australia, I thought, and now they've got the likes of Hogg back. So, look, I don't see anything but a Scotland win. Obviously, Fiji do have the likes of Naya Salevu and Tuisui in the pack too, and they'll always be dangerous, right? And the game will probably be a nice open running game. Hopefully the weather stays up, but it is Scotland at home, so I do back them, to be honest. Next is Italy-Samoa, and to be honest, I think these two teams are on par with each other. We haven't seen a lot of Samoa lately, especially if you follow the Six Nations. Obviously Italy we know quite well from being in the Six Nations, but again I do back an Italy win, and I do actually have a few in my team, which we'll come to later on. Next up for me is one of the biggest games of the year. Living in Cardiff, the buzz around the city centre is absolutely massive, and for Wales, I think their record against New Zealand is pretty shocking, to be honest, so they will want to obviously change that around. But New Zealand, you can never write them off, right? Even if they've had a bad year last year, by their counts, you can never write them off with a team like this. A game which might rival Wales-New Zealand is obviously Ireland and South Africa. Now, two teams obviously playing green, but they're also hugely physical and do actually rely quite heavily on a kicking game. So look, the likes of Sexton is going to be massive for Ireland. And then also Willemse, who hasn't started to 10 too much, obviously missing Pollard, but they do have the likes of Colby back at fullback, as you can see. So it's quite an exciting South Africa team, I think. But also, we know of Ireland's strengths too. Now everyone gets excited about this, and the man you can see here, Dupont, is back. France are back too. So, in my opinion, I don't see anything but a France win. Australia, I think, were lucky to win against Scotland last time out, and I think France will be way too much for them, especially in France. Then the final game of the weekend is obviously England versus Argentina. Being an England fan, that team looks amazing on paper. Obviously missing Laws, which is a huge loss, but Itoji's at 6 now. Farrell's obviously back from head concussion, so that back line just looks scary. But they are up against a pretty decent Argentina outfit, who will obviously want to look to put pressure on them early. In my opinion, it is still an England win though. So without further ado, let's see who I've picked as my starting front row for the first weekend of the Autumn Nation Series. So I've gone with Showman, Marks and Genge. Now look, before talking about why I've picked them three, there are obviously notable mentions like, look, Furlong, you've got Tanada Tupou as well from Australia, Stephen Kitsoff, but look, I've gone with these three. Showman because Scotland are playing Fiji, and I think actually Showman will get through quite a bit of carrying and hopefully a Scotland win. As for Malcolm Marks, well look, do I need to say much more? He's a turnover king, and off the back of that destructive South Africa maul, he can bag a few tries too. Ellis Genge has also been named vice-captain for England, hugely important now for their carrying ability and dominance, obviously in defence, but both attack. So I think, look, that's a pretty strong front row. You've got hooker options as well, such as Cowan Dickey, but also for Scotland too, who may look to use a power game against Fiji. But I think this is a pretty strong front row. Now for me, the second row positions are always a little bit weird. So a second row in fantasy usually don't score too many points, which is where I kind of want to save on stars a little bit. So that's completely what I've done. I've actually picked Rutzer from Italy as one of my second rows. So I actually believe Italy will win against Samoa, which is why he's in here. We'll get through a load of carrying as well, and really good in the loose too. Byrne, well, again, a bit like Marks, we don't really need to say much about that. He's totally destructive for Ireland, and if they do go on to win, will be destructive in obviously both defence, turnover ability, in the loose and also in the line out. But he can also carry super hard. So that's why I've gone with them too. Obviously, you've got more expensive options like Etzbeth Itoji, who's actually playing at 6, so might be a really good option. But for me, I just wanted to save a little bit on stars and the price of my players. Now for the back row, which I think is going to be really important this year. Obviously, you've got 3 picks here, but there's a plethora of back rowers to pick from. So my first one is Watson. Obviously, he was player of the Six Nations a few years ago, so he's absolutely destructive for Scotland. Obviously great on turnover, which will get you loads of points this year, but also carrying ability too. And Aldry, again, France will probably beat Australia, and it'll be probably down to his work rate carrying the ball. Similarly, Ardie Savea is absolutely crazy. I'm actually not sure how he's not won Player of the Year yet. For me, he's been absolutely amazing. So that's my 3. You've also got, look, Hooper, who's also quite expensive in the game, but I don't think Australia have much of a chance against France. You've also got Caelan Doris for Ireland, who do a load of carrying and also tackles, and also Van der Fleer to have that too. You've also got the likes of England, Billy Vunipola, Tom Curry, who will get through so much work. But look, I've picked these 3 because I think that they're solid, they'll do a job, and they're also really key to each of their game. Now my halfbacks is not much debate here. Well, for me anyway. Dupont, obviously absolutely insane. World Player of the Year. I guarantee that France will win. I've been harping on about it. So yeah, he'll be absolutely key and should bag a try or 2. Marcus Smith is England's talisman at the moment. Obviously Farrell at 12 gives Smith a little bit more license to play, I believe. So he'll be key, especially for running meters too. But obviously the 10 is a huge position, especially for points this year, because it actually gets kicking points. So I am actually losing that because obviously Farrell will kick for England. However, if you don't want to go quite risky with Smith, who is predominantly a running 10, then look, Johnny Sexton is obviously your man here. He'll kick all day, and look, he does like to get stuck into a tackle or 2 as well. Bowden Barrett's a good option too. These 2 are predominantly the most expensive ones, but obviously Barrett is playing at fullback, so may get a little bit more license to run. Untamak from France as well, super good. He'll run the game. But I have backed Smith, probably because I do support England. But look, there's so many good 10 options that you could pick from. Now, you may be looking at the screen and thinking, what on earth have you done there? Look, Rieko Ioane, we all know, super class. I think he's actually the most expensive centre on the game, so he'll have no problem scoring points. Mofana, however, is a little bit of an outsider and has actually enabled me probably to bring in a few more expensive players because he's quite cheap. So he's playing on the wing for France, and I do expect him to get good running meters. France do like to play an expansive game, and if you have played fantasy before, Villiers in the Six Nations actually scored hugely in the first game in the Six Nations, and Mofana is playing in that position. So if France click, then Mofana could get some pretty decent points. You've also got the likes of Ringrose who score massively, Tuolangi 2 and Fiku, but I've gone for a little bit of an outsider pick. It could come back to bite me, however I needed to save some money in other places to afford some obviously big picks that I've picked in other places. So this year in fantasy, the back 3 come as a whole. There's no fullback and wingers, it's just back 3 as a whole. So you could pick 3 wingers or 3 fullbacks if you'd like. So obviously let's go with Hogg. he's my captain for this weekend. He's back in the Scotland team, not captain, but I actually think that'll do him good. I think he'll have a point to prove, and look, against Fiji, which is predominantly going to be a running game, he'll absolutely smash it. So he's going to rack up so many running meters and hopefully bag a try or two. And look, I do probably expect Scotland to win that, so that's why I've made him my captain. Colby is also fullback, so I do expect him to also get some good running meters. He is probably going to kick quite a bit, or more than we would expect, because obviously Ireland, South Africa is going to be predominantly kicking game, but you can't look past Colby's feet and try scoring ability. Monty Ioane as well from Italy, probably a little bit of an outsider pick for many. There's obviously likes of Zammit, Penaud, Van der Merwe as well, but I have gone with Ioane. I do think Italy are going to beat Samoa, and to be honest, there's no Capuozzo for Italy, so I think Ioane is going to be a pretty decent shout ball carrying wise for them and getting them over the gain line. And obviously, if you tune in to the Six Nations fantasy, you know that he gets really decent points as well, even if Italy do lose. So on my bench and as my super sub is Takiaho. So he's actually one of the cheaper hookers in the game, and he's obviously on the bench for New Zealand. I do expect him to come on relatively early, around the 60-minute mark probably. So he'll have a decent chunk to obviously get his mark in the game. I am expecting New Zealand to win against Wales, which is why I've claimed him as my super sub. They will obviously want to get their driver mauls going as well to quieten down the Cardiff crowd. So if this happens, then Takiaho will obviously be on the end of them. You've obviously got other options, right? There's so many to pick from. Henry Slade is a pretty decent option from England, but look, Takiaho is my guy here. If many of you have been following me now, then you'll know I do actually like to pick a hooker as my super sub, just because they are pretty much guaranteed to come on, and obviously they've got the drive and line out capabilities, and also carrying. But if you don't necessarily want to look at hookers, then I guess looking at a back three or even substitute 10s are pretty good. For example, Jalibert for France is actually the only back on the bench, apart from Luku, who is the scrum half. So if a back gets injured or comes off for France, then Jalibert is obviously going to come onto the pitch. So he is also a pretty good option and someone who I've debated as well. You've obviously got New Zealand too, with David Havili and Leonard Brown, Brad Webber even, Akira Ioane. Look, the list goes on. I think the reasoning for hooker is because they're guaranteed to come on. Front row is a pretty hard position, and they have that drive-in maul and try-scoring capability. So by now, my stars and budget is becoming pretty thin. So I've actually gone for Cokanasiga, who is obviously starting for England. Obviously only Henry Slade on the bench, so not likely to come off unless injured. He'll probably be a really decent carrying threat for them. Yet to really see him in a proper England test shirt, but he has his chance now, and I do back him to make some pretty good runs in the game. I've also gone for Rafal. If Wales are to win, then it'll be huge because of the pack, and Rafal actually had a massive campaign over in South Africa in the summer. So I'm looking forward to actually seeing how he performs as well. Obviously these two will get half points because they're on my bench. And obviously Takiaho will get triple points when he comes on. So I think I have a pretty good balance here. So that is my team for round 1 of the Autumn Nations series. I guess I'm not as confident as I usually am going into, say, a Six Nations fantasy. I think it's because there's so many more teams and so many more players to choose from. However, I think that my strategy in targeting, like Hogg as captain for example, is pretty decent. He'll get loads of running meters, and hopefully against Fiji they'll get the win as well. If you have any questions or queries, then please put them down in the comments. I always reply to the comments. If you've got a team in mind and you're struggling, then other people as other viewers will probably get involved as well and help you out. So, as I said, this is my team. Please use it as a guide for your team and let me know what you guys are doing down below in the comments. But without further ado, good luck to everyone this weekend. It's going to be absolutely crazy, and I'll see you next week for the roundup.